All right, good, got it. Yo, everybody's talking about um, that Megan interview with Oprah Winfrey. They wanted, like, seriously? But, when you're in a royal family, I guess they worry about shit like that. She's like, oh, I felt depressed and suicidal. Damn. Robert Bigelow tells Bob Lazar stories. Bob Lazar is a weird ass guy. That's crazy.
This is Kyle. He invented one wheel to destroy boredom. Turns out he wasn't alone.
It's magic!
Nope, it's science. We put a motor in the wheel, added lithium batteries, and programmed the board to balance for you. We've got Pint for cruisers, XR.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
You had encounters with Bob Lazar.
Bob
You
Lazar.
knew Bob, and you were around.
So Bob Lazar is this guy. He's been telling me stories for about 25 years that he used to work at some facility like Area 51 or something like that, and he says that he saw with his own eyes spaceships and the government trying to reverse engineer some type of alien technology. And dude's been saying this for a long time, yo. I don't know. It's hard to believe some of the stuff he says, but a lot of the shit he says checks out. That's the only thing, yo. Like, a lot of shit he says checks out. And Joe Rogan even had him on his show once before, yo. He actually sat down and talked with Bob Lazar himself.
When Bob Lazar first.
Now, is this going to be all about the Mylar balloon event?
What's the Mylar balloon event?
Oh, you don't know that one?
No.
So we all jump in my car to go out to the Alien Inn area out there, on
The Alien Inn, is that?
out there
Yes.
north
a
of
bar or something.
Yes, for north of that area. And so Bob Lazar, George Knapp, myself, and I think Gene Huff, who was Bob's friend. We all go out there. Well, unbeknownst to me, Bob has a Mylar balloon, which really bounces the radar signature a lot for its size, and a bottle of gas, helium. So we find our way back out in the desert out there. I'm thinking we're on a UFO watch, which is always fun. Sometimes the best thing is the food you take along, right? And out there under the stars, and it's nice, and you have a good time just watching. So, but there's a rustle of things going on here, and next thing I know, there's a balloon, this Mylar balloon's inflated, and there's a slight breeze, and Bob lets it go. And we're on the opposite side of the mountain range from supposedly S4. And he wants to go that way. Thank God the wind was going in the opposite direction. It was traveling north. Way. So I'm thinking my life's just passed before my eyes.
Why do you think your life passed before your eyes? Because if the balloon goes
Because
towards area S4,
it's going to get picked up, yeah.
they're going to go find out where it came from.
And Wackenhut Security is going to come get us, and I'm going to spend the night in jail.
Right.
So, it all.
And was this before Bob had gotten in trouble for bringing people to the observation point to watch? Because let's tell the story about Bob real quick. Bob said he worked for Area S4, and he was hired to back engineer what they believe were alien crafts. Along the lines, he had this top secret clearance, and along the lines of all this happening, they're monitoring his phone calls. Turns out Bob's wife is having an affair. Bob doesn't know about this. They remove him from the project because he's freaking out, not knowing that his wife is having an affair, not knowing why he's pulled from this project, doesn't totally understand. So starts telling people about what he's doing and telling people, listen, I can take you to a place where once a week they do these tests. So he starts bringing people to this area. They see these objects flying in these spectacular ways that we really can't do with any of our conventional aircrafts. And then Bob gets in trouble for that. Then Bob goes on the George Knapp show and starts explaining all these different things, presumably for preservation, because the best way to probably protect your own life is to go public with this and explain everything that's happening. And they can discredit you and make you look like a nut, but if they kill you, then it leads credence to your story.
Yeah, it gives you a very huge hardship.
So when do you
Yes.
fall into the story?
Well, you've just given me an overload of information now that I'm pretty much aware of, but I don't know exactly when. I don't think, as I recall it, everybody was pretty much at ease, and I wasn't. It wasn't part of.
What year is this? This is all going on?
Oh God.
In the
I
80s?
don't know. 91.
90?
So this is around that time. This is around
91,
when was he
92.
on George Knapp's show?
Yeah, somewhere in that time frame. But I wasn't aware of a lot until I don't think at that time I was aware of him taking people out on, Wednesday nights to go see something out there. I kind of missed out on that or whatever, and I don't think this was anything like connected to that.
I think that was before this.
Yeah, probably.
That was. I think you're dealing with him out after he had met George and
Yeah.
after he had told his story.
Yeah.
Because George is with you.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So
Mhm.
obviously they had already met.
Oh sure.
So what was your initial? Obviously you're a person that has a deep fascination with UFOs. And here you are talking to this guy who's clearly a genius, brilliant guy, Bob Lazar. And he's telling us fucking bananas story. He's out there back engineering spacecrafts that came from another land that are using this element 115, this stuff that's just a theoretical element that wasn't even proven by Particle Collider until 2013, somewhere along that line. Like it was just theoretical up to that point. So he's telling you about all this stuff. What did you think?
I wanted to reserve judgment until I knew a lot more. And the more he talked, the more interesting it became. The more research that George did, things that he uncovered, it became more interesting. And so, as I said a while back, George was doing an interview with me, and I said, I wouldn't bet against Bob's, the truth, but the majority of everything that Bob has said. I wouldn't bet against it. Could they be errors and omissions for different reasons? Yeah, sure they could. But I would tend to say Bob is legitimate, and I don't. There are certain aspects of things that are happen and so forth. I think if you take all of the collective information and the work that George Knapp has done to validate things, it's awfully damn impressive.
But George is such an important part of it because he's a legitimate investigative journalist, and that was his career. And so he poured himself into this
Oh, yeah.
and exposed all the different aspects of this story that seem to indicate that he's telling the truth.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy about it.
And George is not any normal journalist. He's like what? He has like 6 Peabodys.
Yes, he's fantastic.
And
He's diving into this, and
Yeah.
the more he uncovers, the more it seems like Bob Lazar's story is legitimate.
right. So I think I like the philosophy of reserving judgment until you have a preponderance of evidence that it really moves you one way or another. You don't have to have 100%. I go by reasonable doubt.
Deep fascination with flying saucers, and here you are talking. Let me tell you my experience with Bob. Doing the podcast with Bob, I wanted one of two things. I wanted to go, oh, this guy's full of shit. Or I wanted, whoa, this guy's, it seems like he's not full of shit. I think he's telling the truth. I think this guy really did encounter these aircrafts and really did work on these spaceships, whatever they are. That's where I'm at right now. My experience with him, my communication with him, he didn't seem like he's full of shit at all. He's clearly a brilliant guy. His story has not changed at all over the 30 plus years that he's been saying it. It's a crazy story. But when you are a person like yourself, you so me even more than I, who is obsessed with this subject, the possibility of alien life that's visited this earth, and maybe even left crafts behind. And maybe these crafts are in the possession of some secret government agencies that are trying to observe them and back engineer them. What is it like to talk to this guy? Because this guy's seen the thing you're looking for. This guy, you're searching and all of your wondering and staring out into the heavens, and here's a guy that has actually touched it, actually worked on it, been inside one, tried to figure out how they work, can't do it, doesn't understand it. It's talking to these people. Everything's compartmentalized. You got the metallurgist people that are working on what kind of alloy this thing is made of. You got him, who's a part of the people that are trying to understand the propulsion system. And then you've got people that are giving you this information that, like, maybe they have been here forever. Maybe this is a part of an archaeological dig. Maybe they've been trying to study these things for decades with no advancement at all.
Yeah. So we came across, myself and a couple other people came across folks who could collaborate some of the things going on out there, such as silent craft actually lifting off at nighttime, not looking as though the control was very good, but actually lifting off, maneuvering like a real small trial kind of thing. And that fellow observed it from a distance where he wasn't supposed to be. George has come up with collaboration, I think, from 2 or 3 other sources also, besides what Bob said, about certain aspects of things out there. It's just that Bob's story is so much more in-depth, so much more detailed, like that book that he talked about years ago, coming across. Amazing things.
So tell people about the book.
Well, there was a book, as I remember, there was some kind of a book that Bob was allowed to look through, or he seized the opportunity to do it when he was in a room where the book was, but I think that was by design. And it was some kind of a holographic book that as you opened up the pages, whatever the stories were became a hologram. That's my recollection of a conversation that's decades old now. So, if I got it wrong, fire me. You'll have to talk to Bob about that, would you?
Okay.
Or talk to George.
Okay.
And because I remember something like that. I mean, that was like, oh wow, what an amazing way to portray information in some kind of a book and actually have holographic images coming forth out of the, I don't know. It just was, so that I have never heard of that being repeated any place in terms of something else like that happening. And so much that happened to Bob that was so unique.
There was also some very strange summary of what they understand or what they believe to be true about the origins of human beings. And that they believe that what these visitations were about was that human beings are the product of accelerated evolution. And that these species from wherever had been coming here and doing genetic experiments with primates and created human beings. Which is the ultimate, like, who knows, like, wow, that's fun to think about, but we were talking about this last night, like how bizarre humans are. That out of all these things on Earth, we're the only ones with shoes. Out of all these things, we're the only ones that have to wear clothes. We're the only ones that jump into metal boxes with rubber tires and roll around these hard surfaces that we created, or fly in planes, or send video through your phone to other people that are on the other side of the continent. We're weird. We're real weird. We're way weirder than anything else that exists. And if we are really a product of some sort of accelerated process like that, this is how they get the party started on these planets. They find semi-intelligent, curious animals that are using tools or using, opposable thumbs, and they do some things to them.
Yeah, there's a large variety of potential beginnings. More evidence for some than others, right? So that's always the trick.
Have you considered that? Is this like a subject that you've deeply considered and thought of?
Not really.
Really?
I'm here. I don't want to look a gift horse in the face. I'll take it for what it is,
Really?
Yeah. I mean,
I think about it a lot.
I don't know. I think I need more evidence to be more curious about. I'm more concerned with other kinds of things that are now than where did the human species come from, particularly. I'm more driven by other kinds of things that could make a
To the Bob Lazar thing, when you first got to know him and you first were considering this story and how crazy it was, what was it like to meet a guy who, at least by his own accounts, had encountered this thing that you were seeking?
He, as you said, he's very smart, and so he's interesting to talk to, right?
Yeah.
And so that's more than just entertaining. To listen to his story is profound, right? And so it gives you an awful lot to think about and to try to position as to how can you measure future information you might get against that story. How can you verify different kinds of things? And so I've heard a lot more silly things, I think, than what Bob was talking about. Didn't seem all that ridiculous. And then the more you get to talk to him, the more you get to know him, and people like George, who's an investigative journalist, it gets more and more.
Close your eyes. Visualize all the ways you can break through. Now picture yourself staying calm and overcoming every obstacle. Open your eyes. Train what's under the armor.
Wow.
Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience for free, only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including
Shit.
last question. We were talking off camera before the interview began about Bob Lazar and some of the statements that he had made. You've looked at that information.
Yes.
Who is George?
I've only come across this.
I don't know George.
Because I did research on, distant quasars and black holes and dark matter and things of that kind, and I'm rather new to this. And I found Bob Lazar's materials to be extremely convincing. And Bob Lazar, the movie, to me, is unfortunately about the question of is his testimony real and is he real and all of that, which I am not the least bit interested in. I am interested in the part where he discusses the small segments of a UFO craft that he was allowed to work on, and where he did know exactly how the parts were manufactured. But he did not say anything about how they worked. And I'm convinced that what he was describing is the UFO's brain. Now, in my lecture and in the free volume, I discuss how the very difficult for physics to swallow instantaneous propagation of information through the universe, exceeding the speed of light, now measured to over 100,000 times the speed of light. That's the speed of quantum, and it might as well be instantaneous if it's that fast. I believe that all of that shows that there is coherence within the universe beyond what's traditionally understood right now, and that the spacecraft brain that Bob Lazar didn't say it was the brain, but he described its form. And I believe that what it does is it has amplifying sensors in that cap, in that dome that we see on the top of the craft. And you know that people who've been on the craft and have been shown, been given the tour, talk about the big crystal that's above the brains, the minds of the operators. If you look at Bob's sketch, you realize that the crystal is at the focus or at the center of the detectors. So I believe that this part of the spacecraft is doing what I'm trying to say the human brain and the computer is doing. Namely, it's taking information about where it is along coherent paths in the universe and comparing that to a picture of the overall structure of the universe. And that informs the craft if it's getting closer to its destination, which is in the minds of the operators below the prism. So I believe
the results strongly support that these beings are not closely related to
30 years ago today.
All right, so I got my palette nice and clean, so we can get some fresh paints for the skin tone on this next portrait. I dropped off the last commission I had in the house, so I have no more commission works here. All my commissions are done, completed, and shipped out to the customers. And so I just have my own stuff to work on now. And what else was coming up? Oh, my mural. I think I'm gonna hear something about starting my mural within the next couple weeks because the weather's starting to get better, and I think the image has been submitted to the county for approval. So as soon as the county approves the image and we get a nice day, I'll go ahead and start buying some of the supplies we need for that and getting things in order, like renting scaffolding and maybe even a boom lift. Maybe a boom lift will make it a hell of a lot easier, and we can just use it for like a day or two just to do all the high work and then get the top part of the mural done, and then just use like scaffolding for the middle and the bottom part of it. I think you just want some attention, bro. It's all good, man. If you just want some attention, you know? It is all good, bro. Everybody, shout out to Shiggy, the guy who needs some attention. I'm here with you, bro. You don't have to worry about a thing. I'm right here with you. I think I'm gonna hear bad things. You'll be alright.
KLAS aired a live interview with an anonymous man who made some really astonishing claims. He alleged that the U.S. military was secretly studying alien technology out in the Nevada desert near a base that is now very well known all over the world, Area 51.
A lot has changed in decades since Bob Lazar first told this wild story. The Pentagon recently admitted that it really has been secretly studying UFOs and that it wanted to figure out and duplicate that technology.
George Knapp looks back at that 1989 interview that started a whole new conversation.
Totally impossible. The propulsion system is a gravity propulsion system. The power source is an antimatter reactor. This technology does not exist at all.
The claims sounded like Hollywood sci-fi. Months later, when his identity was revealed, Bob Lazar said he worked at a secret facility near Groom Lake, where alien technology was being reverse engineered, that is, taken apart to figure out how it worked and whether the Pentagon could duplicate it. This is the simple drawing he made at the time.
And I had access and was permitted to view and look at the operation of this main level with the gravity amplifiers and the level below.
The premise seems less preposterous now. In a new documentary about Lazar, he describes in detail the spacecraft he worked on 30 years ago.
The craft that I worked on, that when it's going to travel a long distance, that is how it operates. It flies along and it puts its belly to the target and then brings all the amplifiers to power, and it shoots off in that direction. It doesn't fly as it would in the science fiction movies. It flies with the belly, the bottom forward.
If the description of a spacecraft tilting sounds familiar, take a look at the so-called gimbal UFO, a video released by the Pentagon in 2017. Naval pilots encountered a fleet of these unknown craft off the coast of Florida in 2015 and have since had dozens of similar encounters. The spike in UFO incidents prompted a recent policy change by the Navy, which announced it wants to encourage its pilots to report future incidents. Pentagon officials reluctantly admitted to the New York Times 17 months ago that the military has secretly studied UFO incidents, in part so it might figure out the technology.
In the gimbal video, there's a mechanistic turn against the wind without deceleration. So we have a craft without rotors, without heat signatures, without plumes, without tail fins, and certainly no tail number, moving in a way that is counterintuitive to our own aeronautics. When Bob saw that, he came to the conclusion, this has to be a gravity-propelled craft. that it does mimic exactly the propulsion system that Bob Lazar described.
The story is extraordinary.
Jeremy Corbell directed the Lazar documentary, but he also broke the story about another now famous UFO incident, the 2004 Tic Tac encounter. The Navy pilot who engaged the Tic Tac, Black Aces commander Dave Fravor, has said he doesn't believe the astonishing craft was made on Earth, that the propulsion might be anti-gravity. When Lazar was shown the Tic Tac video for the first time, it immediately reminded him of the Sport model, his name for the craft stashed in the desert.
There's no question in my mind. I mean, I'm virtually certain that's the way the craft operated, and that uses close to or the exact same propulsion system.
Former Pentagon intelligence officer Lou Elizondo was in charge of ATIP, the secret Pentagon study. He told us one goal of the project was to determine the physics of UFOs, how they can achieve the seemingly impossible. The military came to believe the craft relied on special metamaterials, stuff that can't be made with known technology. Lazar made similar claims decades ago and was ridiculed. Now the Pentagon is on the same page.
Where the study of UFOs did not end in 1969 with Project Blue Book. In fact, that was a lie, and it is now an admitted lie by our own Pentagon. We are living in a world where it is understood that there are craft technologically advanced from unknown origin that are performing maneuvers that far exceed anything of human technology. This has been going on a long time, and our government has been studying.
George Knapp, 8 News Now.
As always, we have posted additional links and resources connected to this story on our website, including news reports from our archives.
What makes Discovery Plus the greatest collection of real-life entertainment on the planet? Do the math. Woo! 85,000 episodes. What? From nearly...
Well, much of the media have mocked the existence of unidentified flying objects.
With their own experience.
So, what year was your incident? And you have a very, very famous incident that's corroborated by actual evidence, which is one of the rare ones. What year was it, and where did it take place?
So it was 2004, November 14th. It's really, if you draw San Diego to Ensenada, Mexico, we're about 60 miles off the coast in between the two. We're doing workups, so when we get ready to deploy, this was for the 2005 deployment. We were going at sea for November and December of 2004. So we had been out. I had just taken over the squadron in mid-October, so I'd been the CO for a month. So we go out and we're putting the battle group pieces together. So it's not just the air wing, but we're on the carrier. We've got the cruiser. We've got all the support ships out there, and we're going to integrate all the defenses and train as one unit. So the exercise that we're going to do is an air defense exercise, where there's good guys, bad guys. They're all from the air wing. So bad guys today are going to be the Marines, VMFA 232, the Red Devils. So they're going to launch, and they're going to go about 100 miles south of the ship, and we're the good guys, and we call it 2v2, so it's 2 of us against 2 of them. And we're going to work with the USS Princeton, which is going to be the controller, and they're going to control the blue forces, and then the red guys are going to give us a rotation that, they're going to try and intercept so we can stop them from getting up towards the carrier. So that's kind of the training set that we're all good. So the Marines take off first, and they start heading to the south. Now, we have no idea that for 2 weeks, the 2 weeks we've been at sea, they've been tracking these things coming out of the sky. And when I talked to the Princeton controller, he's like up to about a dozen of them. They would come down from above 80,000 feet. They'd drop down to about 20,000 feet. They'd hang out, and then they'd go straight back up after about 3 or 4 hours.
Now, when you say they've been tracking them, who specifically?
This is the USS. The Princeton was tracking them. They saw them on the Nimitz radar, and the E-2 could see them. Because they're out there, that radar's on all the time. And the Spy 1 system on an Aegis cruiser is, the state-of-the-art, probably one of the most sophisticated systems in the world.
So typically when something like this happens and there is some unexplained phenomenon, what do they do?
In this case, if we were in a threat environment, they would tell us. But we're off the coast of San Diego. It doesn't come to the air wing, so we have no idea that these things are out there at all.
So they observed these things, and they never bothered telling any of you guys.
That's correct.
So they just knew that these things had been visiting this area,
yes.
But they just allowed this training exercise to take place anyway.
Yeah, talking to them, the previous, for the 2 weeks they would show up, but it was when we weren't flying. So the typical carrier schedule is, for us, it was about noon to midnight. It's a 12-hour day. There's reasons for that. You can go a lot longer, but for training, we just do the 12-hour day thing. And it's cyclic ops, so you got guys taking off and landing periodically. So we were on one of the first goes. It's, noon, 1 o'clock, somewhere around there, and we take off. The Marines take off first, and my buddy Cheeks, who's the CO of the Marine Squadron, he was leading the Red Air. When he launched off the carrier first, they called him up and said, hey, what do you got on board? Well, the original legacy F-18s have as much gas as the Super Hornets. Super Hornet's about 30% bigger. So they start talking to him about fuel, and based on how long we're going to be airborne and everything else, they go, hey, why don't you just go ahead and proceed to your cap point, because we had just taken off. And that's when the controller had come up and said, hey, I forget our call sign, it's probably like dealer is usually what we went. So it'd be like dealer 1-1, this is Prince of Control, what do you got, say your loadout. I kind of chuckled. I said, well, I got a CATM 9, which is basically just a blue metal tube with a seeker head for an AIM-9 IR missile. It's a training. It doesn't come off the airplane. You can get it with a sledgehammer. That's the only way you're going to get it off, or you got to unlock the lugs with a key. So I'm like kind of chuckling. He goes, well, hey, we're going to cancel the training. So we're like, okay. He says, we got real world vector, and they're going to send us out to the west. So picture it's, if you got a clock, the Nimitz is in the middle. We're a little bit south of that, about 40 miles south, and then the Marines are about 100 miles south of the ship. About 60 miles between the two of us. So as this is all happening, my wingman is joining up. Right, and these are F-18Fs, so there's 2 people in each jet. So it's me and my Wizzo, which is weapon systems operator. I've got the other pilot and the weapon systems operator in the other jet. So they tell us all this, hey, we're in a real world vector, and they send us out 270, 60 miles away from where we're going. So now we're going out even further out to sea. We have no idea what we're intercepting, and this is when the controller starts talking to us. He says, hey, sir, we've seen these objects. For 2 weeks, they've been coming down, and he's giving us the whole story. He says, we need you to go investigate. We want to know what these are.
But they're asking you to investigate in a jet that's unarmed.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we have no... And there's reasons for that we don't fly. We typically don't fly with live ordnance unless we're actually going into like a combat zone or we're on a training range and we're going to shoot something. And the reason is you can go through history of the Navy or Air Force. If you put live missiles on airplanes and then you start doing training where you're squeezing the trigger, someone always messes the switchology up and someone gets shot down. It's happened multiple times. So we don't do it. There's times that we do, but it's rare. So we start flying out to the west. Now I want you to think, because the other pilot has when you talk to, it's out there, it was a female. When you talk to her, here's the kind of goes through the mindset of, hey, we're off the coast of Mexico, real world vector. We have no idea what we're going to look at. Probably drug runner, because you get the drug runners coming up the coast. So we're like, okay. So we drive out, and they're calling down ranges. So they're telling us, hey, it's 270 at 30 miles at 20,000 feet. And it's, and then you just count down the ranges. And we're talking back and forth the whole time. So they got to a point where they say, hey, merge plot, which means radars have resolution cells, range and azimuth of what the radar can actually see. Once you're inside that box, you can't tell the difference between me and the object I'm going at. We're just become one big blob. So they call merge plot, and so the other jet is on my left-hand side, and I'm going to go to a clock code to make it simple. So the object we're going to end up looking for is right in the middle of the clock, and we are at the 6 o'clock position, and my wingman is off to my left side, so she's further down with her Wizzo. So as we're looking around, we look to the right, and yesterday was a perfect example out here. The water is perfectly calm. No white caps. I mean, it's literally a perfect San Diego, California day. And we see white water, something like if you see a seamount, rock underwater when you're standing on the shore and the waves are breaking over and you're like, what is that? It's usually because there's a rock under the water. So it looks like that, but it's about the size of a 737. It actually kind of has a shape of like a cross, and it's pointing to the east. So you got the long part going east-west, and you got a couple of things going north and south. So as we're looking at it, because that kind of draws our eyes, we're like, well, that's kind of odd. We look down, and the Wisdom on the other airplane comes up and says, "Hey, Skipper, do you?" And that's about what he gets out of his mouth. And I'm kind of looking at the same thing. I go, "Dude, do you see that? What is that thing?" And what we see is this white tic-tac object just above the surface of the water, pointing north-south, and it's going north-south, east-west. It's just radically moving forward, back, left, right at will. And it's moving around the disturbance, the white water that we see.
How big is this thing?
So, over time, it's about 40 feet long. And the way I estimate that is, I mean, I got a lot of time fighting other airplanes, so it's about the size of a Hornet fuselage. So that's why I say 40 feet. And this thing's just going left. So the first thing you see when you look down, you go, and this is with our eyes, it's not censored, right? So we're looking down at this thing, and first thing you think is helicopter, right? Helicopters typically stay below 200 feet when we're out there, and they're just driving around. We're pretty far away from the ship for a helicopter for one of ours. So what is it? So the first thing you look for is rotor wash. You know, if you've watched any TV show that starts kicking the water up, and you can see that. It's really easy to see from the air. So we're like, oh, no rotor wash. Matter of fact, don't see any rotors. Don't see any tail rotor. Don't see any, the main rotors. We're like, that's kind of weird. So as we're driving around, we're looking at this thing. We get to about the 9 o'clock position.
How far away are you from this thing?
I'm at 20,000 feet, and it's right down on the surface, right off our right side. So I'm probably maybe a couple miles lateral and 20,000 feet. And we're just watching it move around. And
so it's very small in your eyes.
Not overly small. I mean, an airplane down that low, 40 feet, you can see pretty well. It was pretty clear. So I'm like, okay. So I said, I'm gonna go check it out. And that's what we're trained to do. The other pilot says, hey, I'm gonna stay up here. And I'm like, that's perfect. So now we'll get some separation. We'll get it from different views. And the other airplane will kind of have a God's eye view of everything that's going on as I go down and check this thing out. So I start driving around, and it's still doing its forward, back, left, right. It's still pointing north-south. We get to about the 12 o'clock position. I'm just a nice, easy descent. A reason, because I've been asked, could you go more aggressive? You can, but when you're out over water, the water looks the same at 20,000 feet as it does at 2,000 feet. You don't, so you can even put yourself in a non-recoverable position if you're not paying attention and you go into the water. So I got this nice, easy descent. I get to about 12 o'clock, and as I'm coming down, I could guess probably about, 18,000 feet now, a couple thousand feet below the other airplane. The tic-tac just kind of rapidly goes boop and turns, so now it's kind of pointing east-west, and now it mirrors us. So it's above the surface, we're up high, we're coming down, it starts coming up. I'm like, well, this is getting interesting. So we kind of drive all the way around the circle, I'm descending, it's coming up, and I get over to about the 8 o'clock position on the clock, and it's over at about the 2 o'clock position. Well, the quickest way, as we know as kids, to get someone, you can keep going around the circle, nothing's going to happen. You cut across the circle. So I'm about, probably 2,000 to 3,000 feet above it, and I just kind of drop my nose aggressively, and I cut across the circle, and it's coming this way. It's because I'm trying to fly to where it's going to be, because I want to join on it. I want to see how close I get to it.
Right.
And as I'm pulling up, it's kind of starting to cross my nose, and it starts to accelerate, and within about less than a second, as I start to pull nose onto it and it crosses right in front of me, it just goes poof and it's gone. So I call the other airplane and I said, hey, you guys see that thing? And they're like, sir, it's gone. We don't see it at all. So I'm like, okay, that's kind of weird. So we don't see it, we're looking. At the same time, I said, hey, let's turn around and let's go back to see what was in the water. Was there something there? So we turn around, we're right there. We haven't gone anywhere. It's gone. Water's perfectly, there's no white water, nothing, it's just blue. We're like, okay. So we turn back around, now we're heading back out towards the east, and I tell the controller, I first said, I'm kind of weirded out, and I told my backseater that. We start heading back, and the controller on the Princeton comes up and he says, sir, you're not going to leave this, but that thing is back at your cap point. That was our original point where we were going to hold 40 miles south of the ship. So this thing has went from wherever we were at to about 60 miles in, maybe 30, 40 seconds. It's already over there. And they didn't track it. It just appeared. It shows back up on their radar and they go, it's here. So we're like, okay. So we fly back. We don't see it. We don't see it on our radar. We don't see it on any of our sensors. We do like 2 runs and we come back to ship and land. So as we're in we call it the PR shop. We're taking off our flight gear. One of my crews is getting ready to go out, and I think they were going to be on a tanker mission, but they had a targeting pod on board. So they launch off, and we're telling them about this before, and the backseater, Chad says, he's really determined, he's going to find this thing. So he tells the pilot, hey, we're going to find this thing. So they're just out driving around, and in the back seat of a Super Hornet, there's no stick, but there's side stick controllers, and they're to control the sensors, because that's what the weapon systems guys do. And they can change displays really fast by just hitting a button, and it'll flip from the radar to the targeting pod. And the way the system actually works is, when you see something on the radar and you designate it as your primary target, all the other sensors will look at that point. So everything is kind of synced together. So he picks up a hit on his radar, and he goes to lock it up, because I watched all the tapes. He goes to lock it up, and immediately the radar can tell, it gets signals back that it's being jammed. So, and technically jamming is an act of war. It starts jamming the radar, goes into a jam extrapolate, a bunch of stuff happens on the SOAP. Well, he's smart enough to castle to his targeting pod, and he takes a passive track, and that's the video that you see of Tic-Tac, where it's just sitting in the middle of the screen real quiet. So he does that, and he goes through, if you watch the video, if we had it, I'd go through it with you, but they go through all the different modes. So he goes, it's an IR and an EO. EO is TV, it's black and white TV camera.
We can get the video, right, online?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, let's get the video, Jamie. Where would you, can't show to anybody. We can't show it on YouTube, but you can see it, and people will be able to go to it. You know what we'll do? Go to the video, and we'll tell people when we're starting, and we'll tell people what the title of the video that you get to is, and they can sync it up themselves if they're watching it.
It's publicly owned. Sorry.
Yeah.
It's publicly owned. It's, American government released it. So it is actually something in the public domain.
So you think we could play it on YouTube and not get pulled?
Yeah.
100%.
You think so, Jamie?
It's a government.
Those things, I say yes, we should be able to, but sometimes those things get messy. So
let's take a chance.
Okay,
let's take a chance with this one.
I know if you go, if you find a New York Times article, it'll link to it.
It's a Pentagon release.
YouTube is crazy with copyright stuff, and we've always been like 2 steps away from getting pulled off of YouTube completely. It's a real disaster. I understand from their perspective, there's a lot of legal issues they have to deal with, but
I have it on a private server. I could maybe send you.
The issue, I believe, though, is the actual copyright of the video itself.
Oh, it's a
Pentagon release. Public domain.
And the Pentagon's going to come after us.
I don't think so.
I don't think so either. Did you find it?
Yes. I want to find a good version of the video that doesn't have somebody else's copyright.
Yeah, I've got an unwatermarked version. Let me just look it up and send it to you.
Jeremy will get it to us.
I have to figure out. I send it to you right here. Give me a second.
But do you have AirDrop? But could you AirDrop it?
Yeah, but I got it on a page. I got it on a page, a private page. I can send Jamie.
Oh yeah, okay. Do you have Jamie's info?
No.
Yeah,
Send.
I'll write it down.
Okay. I'll figure it out.
You can send it to me, and I'll send it to him.
Okay.
That's pretty easy. Sorry to disrupt the momentum.
No, you're good.
But I think it's probably important to be able to have this. The video itself, so you could just talk about it. And we're about to yank it up here. Okay, Jamie wrote it down for you. There you go.
Just give me a second to get it out.
Okay. And for people who don't know, Jeremy also produced Bob Lazar, Area 51, and Flying Saucers, and he was in here when we had Bob Lazar in, talk about Bob's experience, and Jesus, if that wasn't a game changer for me and for a lot of other people. This is a subject that it's so easy to mock. This is why I think it's so important that we talk to people like you, because, like I said, just your average, everyday UFO crackpot, they believe everything and anything. Had you ever had any UFO experiences before this?
No, the irony, and I tell this story, my mother-in-law, she'll be listening. She literally, every time I would go home, she would ask me, hey, did you see a UFO? Did you see a UFO? And I'd be like, no. When I first started dating my wife, she was a big, National Enquirer. She had all the supermarket tabloids, and I would always just feed her crap for it. So this happens, and I never say a word. So my friends all knew it was a great story over beers, because they go, hey, what's the coolest thing you ever saw flying? I go, I chased a UFO. And they go, get out of here. I go, no, seriously. And I tell them the story, and they're like, dude. I go, yeah. So I go home, and I got asked by Lou Elizondo to do the New York Times article, which, as like anything else, I always say no. Like, it took a bunch of time to get me on your show. Jeremy kept asking, and it was...
Thank you, Jeremy.
You got to thank my contractor's wife, Angel, who we were drinking, and she goes, you got to do Rogan. I go, what? She goes, it's the biggest podcast on the planet. She goes, you got to do it. And I go, all right, I'm going to do it. Just for you, I'm going to do this show. So,
shout out to Angel.
Yeah, from New Hampshire. So... So my mother-in-law, we're sitting there, and I know the New York Times article is going to come out, and And so it was at Thanksgiving in the article came out 17, so it was Thanksgiving 2017. And everyone had kind of left the house. So it's just my wife and my in-laws. A couple was sitting in the kitchen. And I said, hey, I got to tell you guys this. They said, what? I said, there's going to be this article comes out in the New York Times, and I'm in it. And they're like, yeah. I go, well, I chased a UFO. My mother-in-law's like, ha ha. She looks at my father-in-law. He's rolling his eyes, looking at me like, oh, are you serious? And I go, yeah. And she's like, you never told us. I go, I never really told anyone. I mean, wife and kids knew the event happened, but they didn't have all the details because it's just one of those things I just didn't get into.
Is it classified?
No.
Was it at any point in time?
No, there's a lot of rumors out there that, it was classified and the ship got locked down. No, it wasn't. Men in suits did not show up. No one told us not to talk about it. And this is because there's a lot of other people saying other things. And I said, look at it. Here's the context. So in the battle group, you've got the admiral, you got the captain of the ship, the captain of the Princeton, and then you've got the other COs. So in position-wise, I'm probably, as a CO of the squadron, in the top 20 of 6,000. And no one came to talk to me. No one came to take my tapes. No one showed up in a suit. No one told me not to talk. No one talked to any of my air crew that were involved in this. There were 6 people total involved, the 2 that shot the video and the 4 of us that looked at it for 5 minutes with our eyes. No one, nothing. It just, and I can get into how, there's a report that George Knapp got released. I call it the unofficial official report. And I had met someone, and I'm like, hey, can you find anything odd in this incident? And normally you tell people this, they look at you like, dude, what are you smoking? And I'm like, no, I'm good. I'm tested. And they go, and they said, well, let me see what I can do. And I got a call. I was doing some aerospace work, and I got a call on my cell phone from a guy. And he said, hey, I want to investigate your incident. And I go, okay. So he did. He investigated the incident, and it was very, very thorough. I mean, if you've read it's about 10 pages long. And he tracked down everybody. He tracked down all the people that were, the air crew that were involved. He tracked down the admiral. It was a pretty thorough report. And I didn't think anything of it, because, the people were out there, so they want to do FOIA, but it was never released in a FOIA request. I actually had the Navy call me. I'd been out of the Navy for like 6 years. And
let's explain to people that means Freedom of Information Act.
So I got called by a public affairs person from the Navy and said, hey, is this Commander Fravor? And I said, yeah. And they said, hey, do you know of any documentation on your UFO incident off the Nimitz? And I said, official. And she said, yeah. I said, no, because I knew the report existed, but to me it was an unofficial, because I didn't know where it went. And I had a copy of it, but because it wasn't official, well then, years later I find out that the guy who actually did the report was part of the ATIP team, and I was talking to Lou Elizondo, who runs that program, and Lou showed me the documentation of the original, I think it's like 13 people that were part of ATIP, and they were FOIA exempt. And I'm like, well, that's hey, I know that guy. He's the guy that did the report, which is why it never ever came out until George gets hands on it.
How does something Freedom of Information Act exempt?
Obviously, DOD has the ability, because I'm not a conspiracy theory person at all. I mean, I'll just tell you that. And I think there's reasons that the government doesn't tell the public everything. And I don't speak for the government, but I think there's a good reason for that not everything needs to go out to the public. But most of it does. And what they do is they put a clause on, hey, for this program, whatever we're doing, which would have been an ATIP program, the work that they do and what they find it's not releasable through Freedom of Information Act. There's probably other avenues to get that. And then you go, well, what really is freedom of information? Because I got into this I was talking to someone who's a conspiracy theorist, and they said, well, so-and-so wrote, and they're not getting any information on your event. I said, so what are they going to do? They're going to call up, you're going to put in your request for freedom of information. You go, here's what I want. It goes to some poor guy at the Pentagon who's like, I have no idea what this is. And he searches around, he doesn't find anything. He looks at his bud, and I go, for you. I go, hey, Joe, you got anything on the Nimitz incident? And you go, nope. And I go, okay, well, I didn't find anything. I looked, I did my due diligence, but I'm not going to spend the next 6 months of my life doing your research project for you.
Right.
So and you get nothing, and then you assume the government's covering up when the government really isn't. They just, the guys who do the research doesn't know where it's at or doesn't have access to it.
So. Makes sense. Jamie, we have the video? Okay. Here we go. Now, explain what are we seeing and why are we seeing it in this particular
Okay, so we'll just kind of go around. So if you look at the OPRs operate in the top left corner. NAR is narrow field of view, which is zoomed in. IR at the top middle, it means it's in infrared mode. So instead of seeing color, you're seeing temperature variations. Okay. And these things are extremely sensitive to within like tenths of degrees. They will tell you the difference due to color. So it'll go from black to white. So in this case, white is hot. So if you look down in the bottom left corner, it says WHT. That's white. It means white is hot. So the object that you're looking at is hotter than the guy around it. But what you also notice is there's no plumes. Now, if you're looking at an airplane, when you get closer, you'll actually see the exhaust coming out, and there will be a really glowing plume. That's important as we look at the video. And then most of the stuff on here you really don't need to know. What you can look at is the bottom right corner. It says 19,990 and a B. That's the altitude. And if you look up in the little words where it says HDG and then BALT, it's autopilot. So it's on altitude hold. It's just flying for that. So you can go ahead and play the video. And so those two bars next to the white object, that's a passive track. So what he's done is he's commanded the FLIR to track that. So what the system does is it uses, it's actually tracking, it can track pixels, and it's just basically blocked those hot pixels, those white pixels from the black ones. And you're going to see now, pause it real quick. So up at the top, see it went to a white screen with the black object. This is a black and white TV mode. And if you look at the top, it says TV. So narrow in TV mode is actually, you can get closer than narrow in IR. It's really narrow in IR is about medium in TV mode. So you can get closer with the TV mode. So as you look at it now, in this case, you would actually start to see stuff going on. And even in TV mode, because you get exhaust, the black exhaust that comes out, you'll usually be able to see kind of some of that come on the back, and you don't see anything. This thing's just sitting there. And if you look at the top where it says 3 right, that's the pod is looking 3 degrees right of the nose of the airplane, right? So he's just flying along. The bottom numbers, don't worry, those are time. So it's 41:56. So go ahead and hit play. And what he's doing is Chad's going through all the different modes because he's like, oh, I got it. And he's going to try and see the best video that he can get. Now, there's rumors that this video is like 10 minutes long. No, what you're looking at is the entire video. Now, notice it says 99.9. So hit pause real quick. What that means is while he's got the pod, the targeting pod, because that's his primary sensor right now, the radar is still trying to look at this object and trying to range it, and the radar can't get ranging on it. So the object is doing something to say, I'm not giving you back, because it's just a Doppler radar, just like a police radar is a Doppler. It's trying to get a ranging on you, and it can't do it. So when it says 99.9, the radar cannot see this object right now. It's not allowing it to get ranging.
And I think that's super important, Dave, the way he explained it to me. Active jamming compared to passive jamming. This is a technology that is actively jamming this system.
Rather than something like stealth aircraft, which is the shape and the texture of the...
Yeah, it's... Because everyone thinks stealth is invisible. It's not. It's a technology to basically make it harder for radars to see you. And that's the whole thing. If you look at, airplanes that are nose on are harder to see than airplanes at the side. It's kind of like, think of a barn door. If you're looking at the whole barn door, it's really easy to see. If I turn the barn door sideways where it's really thin, it's going to be a lot harder for you to see it.
Got it.
So that's the easiest, most basic way to look at this. So you keep going. You can play again. And you can look, the airplane is still sitting at 20,000 feet. It's doing 250 knots. He's going to go through different modes and try and lock it. And it's just kind of sitting, and all of a sudden, as the video goes on, I think it's 1.5 minutes long. See, it's going to try and reacquire. It recenters the pod. So it's slowly drifting to the left. The Hornet is still going the same heading, just kind of hanging out. And they're just filming this thing. And then when they get close, it's going to zing off the left-hand side. When you see it on a full, because this, you think digital, you'd be able to get a 1-for-1 copy. Unlike, when you copy your album to a cassette, you lose a little quality. Well, you still do in digital world, and there off it goes to the left, and that's pretty fast to leave that field of view. When we have big monitors that we look at these when they come back, so we're looking at the original tapes. So
play the end of that again, please, Jim. So when it's taking off, how fast? When it just sort of like leaves the field of view and takes off to the left, how fast is that going?
I would say pretty fast. It's an estimate. If we had ranging, you could obviously do the triangle and go, hey, because we know how big the field of view is. But for something to leave the field of view that fast with the pod just staring is pretty fast. I mean, it's like out of here.
Like nothing that we have?
No, because I don't care what airplane. So let's just use the F-22 Raptor. That's probably it's probably the best airplane in the world right now, performance-wise. It can't take off like that, especially if it's a hover. I mean, you're talking something that's just sitting in space in the wind, and then it just all of a sudden accelerates. Airplanes don't work that way.
And it's not leaving any exhaust plume.
No, notice there's none. And when you go back to the
at the end,
Even in the IR, you don't.
Yeah, see, there's IR zoomed in, and there's no. You would see a plume if that was an airplane.
It's creepy how it takes off.
Yeah.
With active jamming, it's intelligently controlled. There's no rotors, there's no plumes, there's no exhaust, there's no tail fin, there's no tail number. This thing goes from a standstill, takes off. It's a propulsion system we don't have in our inventory, and no other nation does. That's how it's understood by the government.
Now that's so if the fastest plane on Earth was trying to do that same maneuver, this system would be able to track it?
Yeah, it would stay with it until it got to the limits of the pod, as far as looking to the left.
Right.
And, the radar would see it. I mean, you get close enough, you're going to, everything becomes visible because you get burned through with radar and how radars actually work. This one is, you tell me, but this was performance beyond. I mean, it's like when we saw it disappear when it flew in front of my nose. And I'm talking something, I'm within a half mile of it, looking at it. And it gets in front of me and just disappears. So we'll just go to something that everyone knows is fast. Let's just say SR-71 that's doing Mach 3. The visibility is 50 miles. So even at 35 miles a minute, I'm going to be able to see this thing turn into a little dot as it goes off into the horizon for probably a minute. The thing that we saw disappeared in a second. Just gone. And that's from 2 different angles. Remember, the other airplane's 8,000 feet above me because we get close to it at about 12,000 feet. So the airplane's above me looking down, and when it disappeared, I said, "Do you guys see it?" And they said, "No, it's gone." It just literally was poof.
Hey, you're looking like you about to tell my business.
It's impossible. I've known.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
Now, when you came back, and what do you do with this information? Do you report it? Do you talk to people about it?
So the typical process, anytime we fly, everything gets debriefed. So because it was a 2-seat airplane, usually the junior person in the jet goes down. So I was the boss, so I wasn't going down there. So we have a thing called CVIC, which is the Carrier Intel Center. So they go down. We always take our tapes because we record stuff when we're fighting. They take it down, and it's really to exercise the system when we're in training so that when we actually get over to, in this case, we were going over to the Persian Gulf, anything that we do comes in and gets debriefed, and then it all gets sent off. That's how you get the CNN video and all that. So they go down and they debrief, and they have to tell, hey, we chased this object. We don't know what it is, and of course, everyone now is going to make jokes because we know we're going to catch shit because that's how the Navy works,
Right.
And I told him, I said, I remember telling the guy in my back seat, I said, dude, we're going to catch maximum shit for this. And he goes, yes, sir, I'll show you the comics. I have them on my phone. We do, the airplane comes out, so we know it's going to come down. So he goes in, they debrief this, both crews go in, and of course, everyone at Intel thinks this is hilarious. So the flight, Chad comes in with his tapes, and when he lands, and here's the thing. Oh, VFA 41. Haha, you guys see any UFOs out there? And he pulls out that tape and drops it on the counter. He goes, yeah, it's on here. So they're like, oh, shit. So they copy it. They play it, and there's it looks like a rack system. They put the 8mm in. It gets copied to a hard drive. And then they archive it. So you go, okay. So they got this video. And then, the ship, this spreads, if you have a rumor on the ship, 5,000 people are going to know about it within probably 30 minutes. I mean, it spreads that. It's like a virus. So the whole ship now knows that we chased this. I guarantee the whole Princeton, this stuff was going on. And it goes all the way up. The admiral knows about it. The captain of the ship knew about it. And then all the movies, because they play movies for us on the ship, and they run like a 12-hour loop. So, of course, the movie selection is Men in Black 2, Signs, Independence Day, and we know we're going to be on the airplane comic because there's always a comic. So you do something stupid or like this, then you're going to be on the comic. I'll show you the comics here in a little bit. They're pretty funny. So that went on for 2 days, but, we're in the middle of workups. I got a squadron to run, so it's like, there was after about the first day and a half, it really died down. And then there's always that closet people that you don't think that are really like UFO buffs. And, you know, like we had one of the Marines would always come and he'd sit down. Hey, Skip, can I sit with you? I go, you want to talk about the UFO? He goes, yeah, I can't get it out of my mind. And then we would just sit there and talk about it. You know, and to me it was like, you know, we were just saying, you know, my entire now flying career is defined by 5 minutes of seeing this white Tic Tac vice, almost 4,000 hours, you know, flying. So
now, did you encounter anyone else that had a similar experience?
I've talked to a couple of guys from the East Coast event, the gimbal video. One of them I talked to daily. He's a pretty good friend of mine. Totally different now. Keep in mind, ours is 2004. The gimbal video is 2015. The funny part about the gimbal video and the East Coast stuff that was going on, because that's off the Vacape, so off the coast of the United States, they're called warning areas, and all they are is if you look on an aviation map, they're these big areas that are blocked off by blue, and they say like Whiskey 291 or Whiskey 243. And
is the gimbal video available in the same way that video is available?
Yes.
Yeah, government out.
Okay, I'm not Jim.
So, and I was talking to him about it because I actually, a buddy of mine who just retired, he was he led the fighter wing on the East Coast, and I called him up because we started finding out that these things were so prevalent out off the East Coast of the United States, and there's a couple of them. So there's we're going to talk. What they start seeing originally was these things, and one of them an airplane almost hit one of these things, but it looks like a cube inside of a clear beach ball. So they don't know if it's actually like a surrounding or you don't know if it's a force field. And you see kind of in the gimbal video, it's got like an aura around it where ours didn't. I always laugh. I go, ours was a Tic Tac. These are not. That means there's different stuff out there that we don't know. But they had 2 airplanes flying, and we fly when we go out to train. We have a distance, you know, we'll just say we're, you know, a mile apart. As we're flying out, so they're flying out, and the airplanes are deployed. We call it combat spread, and one of the airplanes almost hits one of these, goes close down like 50 feet down the side, and almost hits one of these floating cubes inside of the beach ball. And someone goes, it's a balloon. It's not a balloon. I mean, these things are literally sitting still. They're no effect from the wind. So if you got 90 knots of wind and they talk about it, these things are just sitting there. So 60 or 70 people had seen it because the radars, the newer radar in the Super Hornets is extremely, extremely capable. Okay. And at first when they started seeing stuff, they were like, it's just like, maybe it's the radar just giving me a false target. That radar really doesn't give false targets. And then someone did exactly what Chad did, is they threw their targeting flare out there, and all of a sudden when you see a heat signature, there's a return, there's obviously something out where that blip is at.
What is a targeting flare?
That's we call it the AT flare. It's an advanced targeting flare. It sits on the left side of the airplane, and it's
so you launch it like a flare?
No, it's a flare, forward-looking infrared receiver.
Oh.
So it's when you see the bombs blowing up on TV, and that looks like a black and white, and you see it fly. That's the targeting pod.
Okay.
It's got a laser in it. It's got an IR marker in it. It's a very capable system that syncs up to the Hornet, so everything kind of marries up. So this is the Go Fast. No, this is Go Fast.
That's not it.
No, it's the other one.
It's the one that looks like the.
What is that?
That's called the Go Fast. That looks like a Tic Tac. That was another one taken off the East Coast. But they grab it and
bookmark that one.
It's screaming across the ocean at a very high rate of speed. And there's been some debunkers that say, well, that's really not going that fast. It's just the way the airplane is and how the mechanics of the pod are working. When you talk to the crew, because it's actually, I could ask my bud, I'm pretty sure it's the same backseater took both of these videos. Took the Go Fast video and took the gimbal video. And my buddy was on the flight with the gimbal video. But these things, so I called my bud because I'm like, how many people are seeing these things? They're like 60 or 70.
60 or 70.
60 or 70 people had seen these things on radar. And I said, well, what do you do? And they said, well, we put out a NOTAM, which is a nose to airman that just says, hey, these things are out there, so just be careful because we don't want you to hit one. Yeah.
Whoa.
And it's kind of like ours. You go, because you ask, who do you tell? Well, everyone knows. Well, what do you do? And I said, well, because it was all white, and it didn't have any markings on it, and it didn't have any wings, and it didn't have any rotors, and it outperformed anything that we have. Yeah, I think if I would have painted China or Russia on the side.
Is this the gimbal video?
Yes.
Okay.
So it's the same pod.
Start from the beginning, Chairman.
What we're looking at. And when the crew finds it, now what you're not seeing, you're seeing the targeting. When you start talking, when you listen to the video, you'll hear the guy go, dude, look, they're all over. look at the SA page. So we have a situation awareness page, and whatever the radar is getting returns on, it'll show up. It's kind of like our God's eye view in the airplane. So the pod can only look at one thing. So he designates that as his primary target. So that's where the pod is staring. The radar is still seeing everything else. So what they're actually seeing in this video is when you see the object that he's tracking. When I was talking to one of the other pilots, he said there's actually, when you see the radar video, there's like it almost looks like a formation in front of them, like 5 smaller ones that are moving in front of it, and then they turn, so like a formation of these things turns and starts going the other way, and then while they're filming the gimbal video. And that's kind of the comms when you hear, dude, holy cow, look, they're all over.
This is unreported new information that he's actually saying right now. Everybody knows this video. This is the one that they say turns like the Lazar craft, like belly first. However, what he's telling you right now is something that's not public yet. He's telling you that there was a V formation of other objects that the public has yet to see.
You're not going to.
You're not going to.
It's a radar tape.
But there were more objects surrounding this, is what he's telling you right now, which is fascinating because the world doesn't know that yet. Just so you know, I mean, that's brand new. That's never been reported by New York Times, anybody.
Okay. So you can go ahead and play. So the cool thing with this is, when he goes into, so he's in IR mode right now. You're still seeing no plume. He's looking 47, so they're actually turning into it. So it's starting to pull it back towards the nose. See how the number at the top is decreasing? And it's against the wind. Now he's in TV mode, and this thing's going to just start to roll. And you can kind of see it's got that oar around it.
Mm-hmm.
He said they were saying that the ones with the squares inside that look like a beach ball were the same. And this thing's just hanging out. So it's on the airplane's in the left-hand turn, and it's now it's right in front. Yeah, it's just rotating.
Now, this is how Lazar described.
Yes.
Don't put that up. Right. Lazar described that these things would lay flat, and then when they would travel, they would turn up on their side.
Mm-hmm.
And that's how they maneuvered. So this is very similar.
Eerily similar to the propulsion system that Lazar talked about, and that's why this video, we're seeing it very differently now, especially with what we know about Lazar. But the idea is that it would fly belly first in high speed mode. So if they have, these are gravity propelled. This is something that's known within the government. They're trying to back engineer it. They're trying to understand it. We know there's a program currently that they said is gone. However, it is currently active to study this. These things will turn belly first, the saucer type looking ones, and then that's the high speed mode because they focus allegedly, these gravity wave amplifiers. Look, this thing turns mechanically. There, again, no typical form of propulsion, as an expert is telling you. This is not a glitch. This is seen multiple radars, multiple people. Commander Fravor was so close to it. This is something that is not aerodynamic, and it could move in ways and fashions. When he's underplaying it, when we first talked, the idea of this thing going bup, 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 it's instantaneous acceleration back and forth. There's no slowing down, no turning, like a ping pong ball. I said in my first talk, ping pong ball in a glass. Nothing moves like that with traditional reactionary propulsion. Somebody has technology that we don't have in our inventory at all.
So this is counterintuitive, the way it goes from being aerodynamic to being unaerodynamic when it goes sideways and then flies belly forward.
That's correct. It's not, if you talk, because I was just talking to the guy the other day, and he said the irony of it is these things would be out there for hours. We don't have, a high-performance airplane does not have hours worth of gas. I mean, Hornets, if we don't have aerial refueling, and we're actually out doing a mission and fighting and going fast, you're talking hour and a half, and you're coming back to land. Some airplanes are even less, based on their size. So like an F-16 doesn't have external fuel tanks. It doesn't have a lot of gas. And the Soviet airplanes are the same way. The MiG-29 does not have a lot of gas. The Su-27, Su-30s have
because
a lot
of
gas.
weight, because of
its weight, performance, size of the airplane. So, even our intercontinental bombers like B-2, they still take off and they air refuel. They keep topped off so they can get to range. That's how we extend things. You got something like this that's coming down. Just think of the physics. So just I'll use my incident because that's the one I really know the best is you've got an object coming from above 80,000 feet. So I'll just tell you 80,000, it's somewhere around 70, 80,000 feet is where you can actually start to see the curvature of the Earth. So that's considered space. So they're coming from above that. They're coming straight down. They stop at around 20,000 feet. They hang out for 3 hours, and then they go straight back up. So, and I know you had Elon on the show. So SpaceX is really excited because they can launch a rocket and then they can have the booster come back Earth and actually land on a pad. Very impressive engineering feat. Next to this technology, that's like a Model T next to a Porsche. I mean, it's like, wow, really? That's it? You know, and you got something that can just at will move around. Now take it to the next level, and I know there's a lot of talk about this, so Dave's going to go into speculation mode. But when you take a shape like that, so just take the Tic Tac shape, which is shaped like a submarine. If you're using a propulsion that's non-reactive, where you're just manipulating the medium that you're in, air, whatever, you can go into the water. So when you hear all the reports of, hey, we've seen these things since World War II that would come out of the water and fly. If you have a technology like this, as long as the object is sealed where you're not going to get water inside of it, there's nothing that says you can't do that. Because all you're doing is you're not, where a jet engine sucks in air and blows it out the back, or a propeller actually pushes the water, it's a force. Now you've got something that's actually manipulating the gravity field, and it's just moving through a void. Then it doesn't, then air, you could literally, in theory, fly, go into the ocean, cruise around, back up, fly around, go to space. You remove the barriers of the normal propulsion that we have today.
The goal was always to build a design build company with maintenance and lawn care looking after things. Element has certainly helped us get to a level of not worrying about
the Joe Rogan experience.
It's way more fascinating when someone like you talks about it versus some fucking random kook. Yeah, that's what makes me incredibly interested, is just your credibility and the fact that this is not, you don't have a history of seeing wacky shit that other people don't see.
No, just this once.
Man, but it's on video and the other ones as well. It's really strange. And I've seen people try to explain it away, and what I don't like about when they explain it away or attempt to explain it away is that they're trying really what this fucking thing is. They're not looking at it like cleanly. They're looking at it like a quote-unquote skeptic. I don't like the idea of being a skeptic. Not that I don't think you should be skeptical of certain things. I certainly think you should be, but there's a lot of people that brand themselves as skeptics, and I think it's a lazy way to look at things. I really do, because I think you're just looking for the holes in things without looking at it objectively. If you wanted to be a scientist, if you wanted to be someone who is a fan of science, then you have to look at it as a thing. Like, look at this information and let's study this without any bias, any preconceived notions. I don't think they're doing that. They're looking at it and they're trying to find a way where they can justify that it's fake. And they're just doing all sorts of mental gymnastics to try to make it fake. That video that you show where that thing slips off to the left and takes off at incredible rates of speed, that alone should freak people the fuck out.
Yeah, well, I think because people confuse all the time, like we took the video, it was another crew that took the video. We watched it for 5 minutes with our eyeballs, and there was 4 of us. And we all have the same story. We all saw the same stuff. We all came back and looked at each other and scratched our head and said, WTF, serious? What was that? And then what do? You move on. We never saw it again. I imagine they probably saw him on radar after that, but
they're probably seeing him on radar all the time. They just don't bring it to the attention of the general public.
Oh, yeah, because if you don't, for a ship, when they see something and, you go, what is that? Well, you don't have any way to go out there and look at it.
Like we were talking about how they were informing you that they were seeing these things previous to your mission. When you're doing this exercise and they let you know that they're seeing these things, did you say, hey, how frequent is this? Is this something that happens all the time?
I didn't get into that. Ours was more of the moment of, he's telling us, hey, for the last 2 weeks we've been tracking these things.
Right.
And we don't know what they are.
But you don't know whether or not it was just those 2 weeks, or maybe it was a year ago. There was other similar situations, or...
There's other situations that have happened out there, but I would say, for this, I don't even know. One, you got to take it serious. Yeah. And we have a tendency, if we don't know what it is, if we just ignore it, it'll go away. And I joke, there was an incident it's probably not too far off the same time frame, or I think it was the Constellation was doing her workups before she got decommissioned, and an a Soviet Oscar-class submarine surfaced behind her, right? And then it's like, go to battle stations, World War III. How did this foreign submarine get in our area and it's been monitoring our workups? That's a big deal.
Right.
I said, but now we go out and we have these things that are coming at will, and there's nothing we can do about it. We don't know what they are. We have confirmed sighting by 2 aircrew, 4 of us, 2 planes, that said, look, this is not an airplane, this is not a weather balloon, this is not a blip, it has performance well beyond. And the airplanes that we were flying at the time were literally brand new Super Hornets right out of the Boeing factory. I mean, these were brand new, first Block 2 series that came out. And you go, why wasn't something done? It's like, we don't know what it is. I think it's good now, the moves that have happened over the last, 2 years since the original article came out, that, there's a new reporting for the pilots. The Navy's acknowledged, hey, these things, we don't know what they were. They're starting to take it serious because, I know there are other events that are not out, recent events where people have been called in to go, hey, I've seen this thing. So the investigation process is still going on. We don't stop, and the military doesn't stop. Even if you take funding away, we don't stop. We don't stop until we're told to stop. So, what's going on? You go, well, ATIP ended. They spent $4.5 million a year on it. I think it was $22 million over the 5 years. So you go, what are they doing since then? Well, pretty sure there's still people looking at this, and there's still people that are taking this serious. I will tell you that I won't get into specifics, but there are people inside the United States government that are taking this serious. And I've been down to D.C. twice to talk folks, behind closed doors to go because they want to hear the story. And I've got a lot of, you got to be joking. I mean, this seriously happened, and I'm like, yeah, it did happen, and it is real. What are you doing about it?
So, what kind of people are you talking to?
High-level government officials is what I'll say. And most of that is because that conversation is between me and them, and I don't want people speculating, but you can say high-level government officials I have talked to.
Well, that was always the speculation about, what would someone do if they became president? Well, the first thing I would do is I would tell everybody about the UFOs. I would ask immediately what's going on. And I always thought about it, I said, how many people actually know what's going on? And how much of the information? I mean, it's not like if they're dealing with something like this, like your experience, it seems like what you described is what is known. So it's this anomalous event where this thing defies our current understanding of technology, and then it's gone.
Yes.
And so what do you have? You don't have anything else other than that. Like, what other information does anybody have?
Well, I would say this because I've talked to Bob. We did
Bob Lazar.
Yeah, we did an event together, and I'll leave it to everyone it's up to you to believe Bob. I'll say this: Bob's a normal guy. Bob's not crazy.
He's not crazy at all.
Not at all.
That was the weirdest thing about talking to him.
But when you look at it and go, because I had asked Bob, I said what he describes in the technology when he talks about his story. I said, well, do you honestly think we could reverse engineer it? I said, how long do you think it would take us? And his response to me was another 100 years. He goes, Dave, it was so far beyond. He goes, the stuff that he says weren't done. He's like, he was on your podcast because I watched it. Hey, there was no wires, and because I had asked him when he said you first described the ship that he got to see, he said, I used to say, they built it and then it was like wax and you'd heat it up. He goes, now I would say it was built with 3D printing because now with 3D printing we can build things literally from the ground up, and it's basically built as one, not panels, no rivets, it's just made.
Right.
And so when you talk about that and you go, well, it's still another 100 years. So you go, well, what if you had the technology? We still, if what Bob says is correct, we still don't understand it. And how fast would it take us to understand that? I mean, if it's driven by something that we don't even have on Earth, which is when he talks about that element, we can't create it. We can create it for a microsecond, and then it decays, and we
element 115.
Yeah. So I think we're still a long ways off. I'll argue with the people that go, are we really alone? I was telling Jeremy we used to go out on goggles, and out in the middle of the Pacific there's no light pollution.
Goggles?
Night vision goggles, so we can see. Well, you go out at night, I'd be on like a tanker hop or something, just hanging out, not doing anything, driving around in circles with the autopilot on. You just turn all the lights down in the cockpit so you have no light pollution, and you just roll your head back and look up. There's billions and billions and billions of stars out there. And, I look up because I'm like, are we alone? And I look up and go, well, if we're the only ones around, and everything I'm looking at, it's a pretty sad place. It's a pretty lonely universe. I asked my astrophysics prof that once. I said, do you believe in extraterrestrial life? And she's like, of course not. And I said, well, there's billions and billions of planets. You think we're it? I mean, just the probability of it is you go, oh, there's probably something else out there, and I'm not crazy. I'm just opening up the possibility that we are not the only planet that has life on it.
I think people don't like to seem silly. They don't like to be foolish. And I think when people start talking about anything that's not proven or anything that's connected to a bunch of loony people that are making up stories, which UFOs certainly are.
Yes.
UFOs connected to so many people that have made up so many stories. What was that gentleman's name from, well, you would know that guy. He's from another country. Billy something or another.
Oh, Billy Meyer.
Billy Meyer.
Myers, yeah.
Seems 100% full of it.
Yeah, he's proven to have done tons of hoaxes with this, but here's the deal. Sometimes I think people have a real experience, and they're always like chasing that dragon, and they get UFO disease, and the brain goes fucking berserk, right? I know that there are people that have had profound experiences, and then they can't ever replicate them, so then they just start going crazy. And I don't blame them for it. But you got someone like Commander Fravor, when he saw that AAV, anomalous aerospace vehicle, his reaction was, I want to fly it. That's a pretty cool reaction. I'd like to fly it.
Yeah, imagine flying that thing.
Well, that's what I told my buddy, who was my XO at the time, though. I got back after all this happened. He looks at me, and we're just standing right here, and he goes, hey, dude. I go, what? He goes, what do you think it is? I go, I have no idea, but it was pretty freaking impressive, and I'd like to fly it.
Of course.
And he goes, yeah. I go, I mean, it was, it's just like any pilot. You always want to fly the coolest thing.
Of course. Yeah, of course. You're a race car driver. You want to drive the fastest car.
That's it. And now you look at it and go, well, that's something we don't have.
Yeah.
This idea that, maybe we're not alone, that some of these other stars have planets that are maybe technologically advanced. So the next thing people say, and, new eras are going to say, well, they're not coming here because the distance is so vast. Hold the fuck up. From the very beginning, when Bob Lazar came forward and talked about field propulsion, gravity propulsion, distance becomes completely irrelevant. So if we believe, and the radars are right, and Commander Fravor saw this thing moving like a ping pong ball in a glass of water, it's gravity propelled, that's why you can make those maneuvers without exploding, okay? Then distance becomes completely irrelevant for travel. You're literally warping time and space. You're falling into place.
Well, it's like the idea of showing someone a video on your phone long before video was ever invented. People will be like, what are you talking about? Like before photography was invented, which is shocking recent, right? You got to draw pictures of things you saw. Just like those people that drew or painted those images of those men and whatever those things were with Christ in the background. The idea that we could understand what some insanely impressive technology from a planet that is nowhere near us could manifest. It's nuts.
Yeah, Bob Lazar talks a lot about this. Remember, he's a young guy, right? In 1989, he gets shown something. And all of a sudden, he's trying to interpret it through 1989 technology. So he said it looks like it was injection molded, because that's what he had. And then I said him this thing about nanotechnology and, working towards an atomic printer. He's like, dude, that makes a lot more sense. So he has to view it through where he saw it in 1989. However, I will say this. It is my knowledge that we understand exactly how these craft work. Our one limiting factor is our material science. We can't replicate, the fuel source itself is another.
When you say we know exactly how they work.
Yeah, it doesn't break our laws of physics. This concept of amplification of gravity, this concept of gravity propulsion. We understand how things can move from point A to point B almost instantaneously. Our physics doesn't disallow it, but our material science and the fuel to create that machine that we have machines from other places. So we have. Well, Bob Lazar, whether you believe or not, there was a program. I have other witnesses that I will be bringing forward about S4, where he worked. We have
You have other witnesses that worked alongside
people
Bob?
that corroborate Bob's account in that they saw him get on and off the red and whites, the Janet flights that come on. Somebody that went to Papoose Lake and was stopped by non-military guards at that time, people that were aware of Site 4 and ET exploitation projects. One is an SR-71 pilot that I've been talking with for a couple years. So these people are coming forward now, and it's like, I'm sick and tired of doing it. These little nitpicky things about Bob. Okay, there was a program. There was a back engineering program. They've admitted there are materials. So this is like the metamaterials you heard about in the New York Times, all that. We have materials associated with UFOs that are interesting.
What is that? What are you talking about?
So this is something that was launched in the first New York Times article, I believe, in December of 2017, that there is studies being done right now on materials associated with UFOs, right? So actual metals that have come off of, you could say, crashes or...
And who is that explained that there was something that they were with Eric Weinstein that was explaining that there was someone who reportedly has something along those lines?
Jacques Vallée has 17 samples.
17 samples. How does one guy get 17 samples?
Well, he's Jacques fucking Vallée, right? So he is the guy first ever for the United States military created a computer program for the study of UFOs for Project Blue Book. So he's an old school guy. They modeled him after, in the Close Encounters movie, it's modeled after Jacques Vallée, the French guy. So he's kind of like been involved with this. He's had more access to government databases than any of us. He went around, collected samples from known, crashes or like when things will come off.
And what's the conclusion?
Well, they're studying them right now. There was just something on Fox about it. They're studying some of the materials and what they will find, because the ones they're talking about, I actually took to New Mexico and had 5 scientists study it about 5 years ago. I got my hands on it, got to study it. The famous parts they're talking about now. It's layered, and the way it's layered is what they're trying to see if it's anomalous elementally, or the way that the elements are bound together, and also the atomic level of layering is what's interesting. We'll find out if it's...
Explain what you're talking about. What is this thing that you saw?
Okay, well, there are a lot of different samples, but when you get a sample of something and you can see...
How big are these samples?
The ones that I looked at,
yes.
They ranged from about this size down. They ranged from the size
of an orange.
Yeah, size of an orange to the size of a quarter. These are materials, right?
Are they materials from a crash?
So that's allegedly, or there's a known crash. This is in the public domain rather than government controlled. So what I was looking at, or having the scientists look at, is isotopically and elementally. What are the elements that are in this? Are they engineered?
And what's the conclusion?
Well, I'm not. I'm going to leave it to the people that are doing it now, who have much better machines than I had.
Do you know any cliff notes?
Yeah, what I understand, there's atomic layering. There are levels of it, like we do with graphene. We lay down these layers that are basically oriented a certain degree. That's how you get a superconductor or something like that. If you take a piece of graphene and it's highly machined, so it doesn't deviate from that atomic layering, you can push it right through ice like a hot knife through butter. It's the weirdest feeling in the world, because you just take this piece of what feels like graphene and it just goes right through butter, because it's a superconductor, and the heat from your hand melts the ice. So that is a metamaterial. It doesn't occur naturally. Humans created it, and it has special properties because of the way it's atomically layered. So if these materials are from somewhere else, then we suspect that they're going to be highly machined, that they're going to be created for special use. So my whole point is, our material science has not caught up with the physics that we understand for these field propulsion systems. I'm just telling you, believe me or not, but you'll hear more about it, that our material science in 1989 and today is our limiting factor. And as our material science gets better as humans, we know how these things work. Now, the fuel source, that's a whole nother conversation. But as far as creating these machines, that's what we're trying to do. That's why there is secrecy. We're trying to exploit the technology, because whoever exploits it first wins. It's a game changer. We don't want Russia to do it. We don't want China to do it. If we had a non-reactionary propulsion system, the world would look different instantaneously.
get your next pillow. Why do we make a pillow in the shape of a cube? I'll tell you.
The Joe Rogan Experience.
So what do you tell me, Jamie? There's a UFO yesterday?
Yeah, NFL popular quarterback for the Cleveland Browns, former #1 pick and Heisman winner. I think he lives in Austin in the off season, and he saw a potential UFO last night. He says.
He says almost 100%. Em and I just saw a UFO drop straight out of the sky on our way home from dinner. We stopped and looked at each other and asked if either of us saw it. Very bright ball of light going straight down out of the sky towards Lake Travis. Could have been a drone. Could have been some kids.
He's a football player?
Yeah.
Are we going to believe him because he's famous?
Yeah, that's the only reason.
Man, it just got a lot of attention as well.
Well, he's famous, so you listen to his Twitter, I guess. I don't know. Have you ever seen anything crazy?
No.
No?
I don't think crazy. When I'm up in the mountains sometimes camping or whatever, I feel like some shooting stars and some stars, fall, which actually now that I'm saying it might be a little bit crazy. So maybe I have seen some shit. I don't know.
Everybody wants to think they did, right? I want to think I've seen something crazy, but I definitely haven't. I thought I did when I was a kid, but now I think I was probably lying.
Yeah.
When I think about it, when I was a kid, I was probably full of shit. I probably wanted it, what I'm saying? Like I probably saw like a military jet, and I thought, and I wanted it to be something cool. Like I remember the first time I ever saw a stealth bomber. We were filming Fear Factor, and it was over Palmdale, which is near Edwards Air Force Base. If I didn't know what that was, I would 100% think that was from another planet.
Yeah.
When you see the thing, black wing flying overhead, it's pretty badass.
Yeah. I don't think I would, I think my brain would just immediately be like, something can explain that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, that's the problem with anything like that. It's like, it's the idea that you're looking at something from another planet is so outside of what you see every day. You don't know where to put it.
It's getting less outside though, right?
Right.
It's getting less outside, which is weird. What's up with the, because I remember you saying something about it on the podcast. What's up with that bill that passed that said that they have to release whatever information they have to release about?
It's a COVID relief bill, and inside the COVID relief bill, they gave, I think it was the CIA, gave the Central Intelligence Agency 180 days or something like that to release all the information that they have about UFOs.
Where are we at on that?
I don't know. It's a good question.
What day are we on?
They don't have to release shit.
No, yeah,
they
not
can say that. They
shit.
go, this is what we got. We got a blurry picture. Get the fuck out of my office.
Yeah, we're not going to know anything.
Yeah, the idea that they're going to tell these senators and all these elected people what they know, they're not telling them shit.
Unless the aliens told them that they have 180 days to tell everyone.
Maybe. Now you're talking. If Trump didn't tell everybody, we're not going to know.
Yeah. Yeah, that's true.
I remember when Chris Rock was talking about Obama, and he was talking about Obama. People were disappointed in Obama's first administration, and he said, you got to wait until the second term, and that's when you do some really gangster shit. And Obama didn't do any gangster shit. But if Trump got elected again in 2024, because you can only do it twice. If he got elected again in 2024, maybe he would tell us.
Recount the votes.
Maybe get on TV, and that's the first shit he talks about right away.
Here's what the
okay. Included as a committee comment on the Intelligence Authorization Act, the committee directs the Director of the National Intelligence in consultation with the Secretary of Defense and the heads of such other agencies to submit a report within 180 days of the date of enactment of the Act to the Congressional Intelligence and Armed Services Committees on UAPs. Why can't they just say UFOs? Unidentified aerial phenomenon. What's the difference? Unidentified flying object. They got tired of using that, so they changed it to UAP. Why are they gonna fuck with us?
I don't know, man.
UAP.
Words change all the time. They have to.
Catch new episodes of the Joe Rogan Experience for free, only on Spotify. Watch back catalog JRE videos on Spotify, including clip.
So, I can see my voice. Cool. So it looks like the only
kind of downsides to using the iPad, at least as far as I see, are the fact that it's pretty small compared to most tablets, and the fact that you can't use, powerful Windows software with it. But I have found that Fresco so far, after what is coming up on 16 months, so since I did my 8-month review video of it, it's been pretty good. It's been a pretty good experience. So if you don't know, the live stream, and I'll be checking chat soon here, but I just wanted to go ahead and get right into mention the things that I found that have been really cool about Fresco while I've been using it past few days. And so the first thing is I was trying to get used to Photoshop because I wanted to make some brushes, see if I could actually do that. And while I was doing that, I found the workflow for it was super great. I could work in Photoshop, and then I could save it, and then go to my iPad, and then it would be on the cloud, which is really, really nice. It's way better than trying to do the same thing to just upload directly to a Google Drive or Dropbox kind of thing. It saves a lot of time. So I was like, okay, this is great. I want to try and use that. I finally found a way to get the brushes to work the way I want to as well. So I was like, dang, all right. Wait a second. We got a super chat here. Thanks so much for the donation, Breezy. Appreciate it. But yeah, I was like, this is really, really nice. The brushes are really nice to use. And so I wanted to try to get used to Fresco a little bit. And one thing that I found that has been really nice is the eraser. They've gotten a lot better with it. So I used to think that what I'd have to do here is I'd have to tap and hold to switch to the eraser and then let go, which works, and it's still really bad because a lot of times it will think you're not tapping because of the palm rejection. But all you have to do is double tap it, and then it's eraser mode. Double tap it, it's eraser mode, then tap it once, back to brush, back to eraser, back to brush, back to eraser, back to brush. You can move it around, and in that way it's actually better than Procreate, because Procreate you have to reach all the way up to the upper right hand side of the screen to switch to eraser. And yeah, you have the double tap feature of the Apple Pencil, but if you're like me, you find that thing also has too low of the success rate is too low. There's a lot of times where it doesn't work. It pisses me off. And I noticed that if you don't use it a lot, and then you start trying to double tap, it will lag, and it'll be like, oh, now you want to start using double tap, and then it'll get more sensitive, which is really annoying. And the other thing I really liked about Fresco is the brushes from Photoshop actually work exactly the way you'd expect them to. When you try to import them into Procreate, they don't look the same, even with Clip Studio Paint. Now that they import the .abr files, they don't look the same. But Fresco, they work just fine, exactly how I'd expected. And the cool thing is, I had an actual weird issue with Procreate. I tried to import some .abr brush files that I exported from Photoshop, and it couldn't work. It just wouldn't import. It said there's something wrong with the file. I import that same file to Fresco, and it worked. I'm like, all right, seems like Procreate is also sensitive to whatever type of .abr file you send to it. I didn't know there were different versions of that, but apparently there are, or maybe there's a brush type that doesn't leak. All kinds of possibilities there, but yeah. I say all that to say though, of course you guys know me. This channel was built on Procreate, so you know that I still love Procreate. And there's a lot of things here that take me a while to do still, that are not as fast, like selection tools and stuff. It's kind of annoying how hard it is to select and reorient. But it's still solid. It doesn't glitch, it doesn't lag, So it's pretty good. It's pretty good for what it is. And I just find that between the brushes working really well and the synchronization with the desktop, I find it's really a good happy medium for me because, I've probably said already that I find painting on my Cintiq or drawing on my Cintiq a lot easier to get nice appealing gestures and stuff like that. And it's a lot harder for me to draw on my iPad and get the same quality. But Fresco kind of gets me 50% of the way there, which is really cool. So yeah, I think that's gonna be pretty much it for like the video portion of this. So thank you guys so much for coming to the stream and waiting through that. Happy Friday. Should we switch to Fresco? Well, if you heard everything, it's up to you, right? Okay. Any tips for a beginning art YouTuber to start? Everyone who asks me about YouTube, they just don't make videos, and that's the biggest thing. You have to learn from making. And like there are so few people know who actually ask me about stuff like that. I actually made a YouTube video. So the best thing is to start. I'm guessing you don't have any videos up if you're asking that right now. Just based off of statistics, nothing wrong with you personally. Love your YouTube videos. Thank you, Laeli. And yeah, in case you don't know, I'm streaming to both YouTube and Twitch. I'm the bad guy. You ate pizza for dinner? Be jealous? Nah. I have some fried chicken here. I'm not jealous. I couldn't finish it before stream. It's good to see you guys again. You're new? Welcome, Isol Blob. Are you from YouTube? Love the way you color. Thank you, Midorian. Even though color is literally my weakest thing. Hot pizza, preferably, yeah. Cold pizza, I'll eat cold pizza, but hot pizza is way better. The face on the thumbnail, thanks, Rolanda. I was like, I'm gonna do a Poggers face, and that should get people in the stream. It's my fan on. Getting hot. Hot. Free program for PC, Krita, Metabang. There's a lot. There's that Fire Alpaca thing too, right? Nothing much, Todd Drawist. Cool name. My voice is like butter. Thanks, coffee. Trying to remember where I wanted to kick this. Go back.
I love my Squarespace site. Simple and beautiful design.
I think I want to fix some of the clouds here. I don't need this for now. So let me go back to the brush I was using. Any tips to draw on a screenless tablet? You don't really need any tips. You just need to get used to it. You know, other than ergonomics. So make sure that you're in a healthy seating position. So ideally, you're going to be looking directly at your monitor. Even the position I'm in is not that comfortable. I mean, not that healthy because I'm looking down, and you want to be sitting up straight. So don't do what I'm doing. But this is still a lot better than like bending over my table trying to draw on the, on top of my desk flat and then looking back up to chat every now and then. So yeah, chat's going so fast right now. Yeah, Clip Studio Paint's awesome. What do I think about Ethan Becker and his videos? They're great. Yeah. Super helpful. Even I've learned stuff from his videos. Sitting up straight is a scam. Oh boy. That's a very glassy screen. Well, I am very glad you asked that because we have a channel sponsor called Paperlike. All these P names here. Paperlike is a matte screen protector for your iPad that is also doubles as a way to add friction to the surface of the glassy screen. And you can add it to your iPad and it will make drawing feel just like paper, hence the name Paperlike. Get yours today with a link in the description box below. All that's serious though, for real. You can check it out in the description box below. You're a shrimp. I remember that shrimp meme, seeing like the shrimp curled up on the chair. That was me earlier today, though, when I get a little more frustrated when I'm drawing. It's really bad. That's when I should know I need to take a break. Do they make one for Wacom tablets? Nah. It's only for iPads. Why is everybody saying like, oh, he's ignoring this chat? There's like both. Are you really sure you've scanned every single thing I respond to? I see both right now. And there's literally no reason for me to ignore one and prefer the other. Come on. Come on. You memorize the whole phrase. It's just easy, you know. Peace, not war between YouTube and Twitch chat, please. I agree. This is one thing I don't like about Adobe Fresco right now, though. I don't see why. So when you go into the app mode, where you double tap and then you can tap to switch to eraser and pencil, when you select the layer, oh, now it's not doing it. Yeah, it's like it starts to select multiple. I'm like, no, I don't want to select multiple. I just want to change the layer I'm on. I don't know why it's doing that. Like, they should remove that feature. I thought it makes sense for it to be for brushes. You know, to switch to the eraser and brush quickly, but I don't see why you need that to select multiple. There should be another thing for selecting multiple. Why? But that's not Procreate. Yeah. We're trying out Adobe Fresco today. Your feed is quite buggy. Yeah, trust me. I'm watching both chats. You're probably new here, because you know better to say stuff like that.
This is the checkers game where grandson and granddad will bond. New boyfriend will unofficially become family. These are the Mervo vacation homes waiting for your family.
Thank you. Such cool line art. Thanks, Jeremy. You think they're Apple Pencil tips that have paper texture? Yeah, I've heard of those. I don't think they really matter. The matte. Hey, thanks for the sub, Kuru. Hello, streamer. Yeah, I've tried I mean, technically the nibs for the Apple Pencil 2 are matte, but it doesn't really make a difference. At least I don't think so. It's been a long time though. And then the rubber ones still are weird to me for like using on glass instead. So they're cheap enough to try out, and it's not really a big deal if they don't work out for you. At least you can find some off-brand thing on Amazon. What's the one feature you hate love about Procreate? Something you hate love? Yeah, so one is this eraser thing, switching back and forth with Fresco. Procreate, I don't think I hate anything about Procreate, to be honest. Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah, I really can't think of anything. Oh, I mean, it's just... No, that's not really Procreate's fault, though. That's iPad's fault. Yeah, I really can't think of anything at the moment. If I were to go back to it for like 10 minutes, I'd probably figure it out. Do I enjoy drawing more on an iPad? In some ways, yeah. But mostly on Cintiq is better because the screen size means a lot for me. Do I like drawing buff girls or non-buff girls better? To be honest, buff girls are easier and funner to draw because it's like, when it's easier, it tends to be more fun. But also, it's harder to add interest to very smooth. Thanks for the sub, Todd Drost. To very smooth types of, like, there's some like references where the woman's arm will literally be a tube, like a noodle. That will be it. There's no definition. You can't even tell what elbow is, and those are like really annoying. Same with the legs, right? You got to be a lot more creative, which, you know, sometimes that can be good because it forces you to think more outside of the box or outside the photograph. Do I have any size tips? Still, yeah, that's pretty low resolution. That's not even full HD. That's not even like HD, which is the most widely. You need to do at least 1080p, which is 1920 by 1080. That's still lower than that on one side. So I'd recommend the lowest you do these days is like 3000, which is pretty much double that. Like, so that's what I started with. If it can handle painting, whatever you're using, if it can handle painting at all, it should be able to do 3000 by 3000 pixels. At least 3000 by 2000, you know, which is off that basic 3:2 ratio there. What's up, HDD Draw? The program gets laggy? What are you using to paint with?
Spring is around the corner. It's time to upgrade your style and comfort. At Raymore and Flanagan's Refresh Sale, you'll save 10 or 50% on everything and get safe delivery 7 days a week at Raymore and Flanagan's Refresh Sale.
You ready to step up your ball game? It takes performance.
There's pros and cons to it, Rod. Alright, I need to, nope. Decrease the brightness or opacity of this. Opacity. You work on 10K. Wait, you work on 10K on 15K? Wait, I'm not sure what that means. There's no way it's a 10 by 15K canvas. That's crazy. Even my computer would lag with that. Welcome, Celelix. Have I ever tried drawing with Metabang? I think, did I do a review on that? Maybe I have, but I'm not doing those anymore. Because I don't really enjoy making that kind of content. And that's not really what I want to be spending my time doing on my channel. I want it to be strictly about sharing things that I learned about art along my journey that I feel like will be helpful to other people. Do I print my artwork? No. At least not yet. Thank you, Scribbles. The inspiration. This is pretty heavily inspired from one of my favorite artists, Sanguine. He's a really cool guy. And this is actually a result of a critique that he was able to give me. This piece looked different. You won't get to see what that looks like unless you're part of my patrons, which you should definitely consider because I do a lot of real-time and sped up video footage and show that off to my patrons. But yeah, you're only going to see this one. This is the one that I'm also going to post. I see really low energy. No, I feel pretty good. Feel pretty good, Jackson. You might have been coming from like an old video where I was a lot different. I don't know if you're a new subscriber. I've noticed I'm getting a lot of subs from that one video where I was talking about like, don't draw faces like this, and I was really concerned. I'm like, these people are not gonna like any of my other content. because that's a very like drama-y type of video. So I'm like, I was really tempted to hide that video. I'm like, I was like worried about my channel. I'm like, I can so see like people subscribing in mass, and then they don't watch anything else, and then the algorithm is just like, oh, severely punishes them.
So, Pillow Cube just sent me this cube-shaped pillow, and I'm totally excited. Let's see what's inside. First off, I really like the construction. It's got a quilted cover built right in.
For that, which would suck. You feel like you have to do drama to get popular quickly. Yes, that's absolutely true. You like my advice on facial expressions. Thanks, Cactus. But yeah, that is very true. It's very easy because that's what people like to see. It's very entertaining. Drama is very entertaining. Al Gore the rhythm. Hey, Camo the bear. Which is better, Surface Pro or Chromebook? I'd assume a Surface Pro. I've only used a Surface Pro, but Chromebook never looked appealing to me. Would I like to work in a studio? No, not anytime soon. Honestly, I don't have any credentials to work in the studio. I was just thinking about how earlier today I was spending like 2-3 hours to fix this one face, and I was just laughing to myself like, I could never work in a professional environment. They'd fire me. You can't spend that long on one thing. Thank you, C-O-C-Y-O-T-I. I can't pronounce your name. You've been here since the iPad Pro 2018. Hey, thanks, Ida. Appreciate it. Coyote. Oh, okay. Hey, Scumworks. What glue do you use? What do you mean? Glue? Toothpaste? I like, what is it called? The one with, what is that thing called? Baking soda in it. The orange one. With a lot of baking soda in it. I love that one. Praise the Lord. Nice. It's always like a gamble. Arm & Hammer. Yeah. Yeah, that's it. That's it. That's funny. I've been using that for years and I couldn't think of the name. I just look for the orange color, I guess.
Making pieces available on my online store has helped me to stay in my practice. It allows me to launch new pieces.
I saw somebody mention Twitter, and God damn, see, like, this is something I don't like. That I guess it's my fault. I could just do this, which gets rid of those layers so I don't accidentally touch it. But something that happened recently, not recently, but on Twitter, I don't know if you noticed, but I'm not really active, but I do post like every few months. And there's an account that had the handle ErgoJosh before me. And so I had to do ergo_Josh. And I was DMing them to be like, hey, can I have this handle? Like, can you just give me my handle name back? They never responded. And in their bio, they had like, if the real ErgoJosh wants his handle, DM me. And I was like, wow, that's sus. And then eventually I noticed that they blocked me. And I'm like, so they're trying to use my handle, but act like, I guess, they were being nice and offering it to me whenever I wanted. So, yeah, I reported it. And now, after having to prove that I'm ErgoJosh, I guess, to Twitter, the account has been suspended because they were violating, because there are rules to protect people who are fan accounts, and they were violating those rules. So they were literally, like, as far as anyone's concerned, they were impersonating me. So the account's gone. But now I'm trying to ask Twitter if I can get the nice Ergo Josh handle back without the underscore. They probably won't give me that. But at least that account's gone, because I also didn't like what they were posting, and that was weird. Like, it was I don't want to be associated with the stuff they were posting. Yeah. Twitter got some extreme people. Yep, that's why I don't spend too much time on there. But it's the fastest way to get information these days. How long have I been doing YouTube? Technically since late 2017, but really late 2018, because that's when I kind of got noticed by the algorithm. So. Hey, Blue Sketch. Glad you can make it, Twinkle. My mic, I have a very podcast type sound. It's probably both. I have a pretty expensive, nice mic here. This is it. Does that look wrong? Yeah. Hey, thanks for the donation, Sarah Jean. You've never caught a live. Love my videos. Thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Tighten and pony, time to work.
Let's go.
Do I customize my pressure settings? I actually haven't yet, but this is something I actually think I like more about. Fresco, you can customize your pressure settings just like that. So you could actually get into a workflow where you change it on the fly. Like, that's so fast. Boom. That's faster than Procreate, hands down. And it's actually kind of nice because they give you a test area, and then you can pick light and heavy, and